Welcome to the Build Business Acumen podcast, where we deliver practical knowledge and powerful guidance. Here is your futuristic host, Nathaniel Schooler.
Today I'm joined by Paul Thies, and he's a commercial storyteller connecting people, perspectives and profitability. He spent nearly 6 years with Thomson Reuters, and over the last 10 years he has won lots and lots of awards. This is certainly a man who is worth listening to. Thanks so much for joining, and make sure that you review and give me a 5-star review wherever you're listening. I'd really appreciate that, and share with your friends. Now let's get into the show. Well, commercial storytelling in the age of big data is a fascinating subject, actually. So I'm gonna just jump in and ask you a question, if you don't mind, because I've got a few questions that we prepared earlier, clearly. And we live in an age where massive amounts of content and data are generated on a daily basis, right? So what do you think are the keys for business communicators looking to differentiate their material?
So let me start off with a couple of statistics, which I think are really telling about the world in which we live, and it kind of paints a picture of the environment that modern businesses operate in and modern professionals live in. So Forbes and IBM have reported that we produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. The consulting firm McKinsey speculates that by 2020, so basically a year from now, each person will generate 1.7 megabytes of data every second. And the International Data Corporation states that by 2020, global data usage will reach 44 zettabytes. Now, a zettabyte, for those who don't know, and I didn't know, but a zettabyte is a picture of 1 with 21 zeros behind it. It's staggering the amount of data that is generated. And, at some point we're going to live in an age where artificial intelligences will be, much more practical, less theoretical. They'll really be interwoven into the fabric of our lives. And, AIs will be built to be able to contend with that amount of data. But human mind, the relationship between information and comprehension is not an infinite track. At some point, information, our ability to process information will buckle. And I would say that that's where art comes in, is that at some point, and you think about like just all the emails and all the content that you encounter in your day, your mind realizes it can't just take it all in. It has to filter it. And, there are certain things that resonate with you that you kind of, drill down on. And so I think in a world like that, it really becomes the art of storytelling in the age of big data becomes very important. You've got lots of firms out there doing very smart things with keywords and, trending topics and stuff. And it's very easy to get kind of pulled into, the undertow of those topics. And so you have to find a way that your content surfaces and, kind of stands out. And I think some of the way that we do that, I think the secret to that is focusing on people. At the end of the day, as creatures, our primary interest is in other people. Storytelling, movies, books, all of that, our hunger and our appetite for stories has never abated. And, so I really think that that's the secret that, commercial enterprises really should leverage, is focus on telling human-based stories. And when you do that, it inculcates trust in your organization. It inculcates interest, and people want like fascinating solutions, but they want more so they want to hear the human stories behind those fascinating solutions. So I think as a a business communicator, if you can really focus on like how your people are doing interesting things, that's the way to tap into the hearts and minds of your customers.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I found some figures actually on I would call it sort of corporate communications merging with personal communications, right? I mean, that's in essence what we're sort of talking around here. It's kind of the people and how they communicate to the outside world from that particular business. And I mean, for example, I've got some figures here from entrepreneur.com, and they said that actually leads developed through employees from social media convert 7 times more frequently than other leads. And sales reps who use social media as part of their sales techniques outsold their peers by 78%. And 92% of people trust recommendations from people over brands.
I think you're hitting on something, again, that people are at the center of that. And it's not surprising that like social media recommendations from people that are really what drive like the greatest amount of interest, greatest amount of leads in your sales funnel. And you take a look at, for instance, Edelman, the research firm. Every year they do a trust barometer, and they focus on all kinds of aspects of trust in media, trust in information, trust in organizations, governments, etc. And perennially, the barometer finds that corporate employees, rank and file employees, far outpace executives and C-suite professionals when it comes to audience perception of trustworthiness. People just, it's like if you put your CEO out there with a message, only a certain amount of people see that as a trustworthy vehicle for delivering that information. But if you put like a rank and file employee, they outperform in an audience perception, in terms of trustworthiness. People just, they feel like there's a greater authenticity. They don't feel like they're being sold to or that they're being fed a message, but it resonates more. And
Right.
So again, I think that comes back to kind of what I was saying a little bit on the big data, the world that we live in. It's like more and more we're going to be just inundated with content and data and information. And I think, the good news is that what I hope is that it actually strengthens human relationships and human bonds, because in that world, it's, how are you going to establish trust? How do you find trust? How do you know what to trust? And I think that it's going to drive us more to look to other people as where we anchor our trust. And so, companies that want to, I think, grow in that kind of an environment need to really take a strong look at their social media aspects, how they're promoting their employees as brand ambassadors and brand storytellers, and really leveraging the power of human relationships in, their efforts to grow their enterprises.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, people buy people at the end of the day, don't they? And, I've got some other figures actually from entrepreneur.com, which supports everything you've just said. They actually found that there was a 561% more reach from employees sharing brand messaging than brand accounts, right? 24 times more frequently that content was shared by employees sharing it. So people were sharing it 24 times more than actually when it was on a brand account. And there were 8 times more engagement created from the employees versus the brand account. So it is quite incredible, really. But I think the main thing is actually making sure that the people understand what the brand messaging actually is. And there's a famous question that someone asked the cleaning lady at it was NASA, wasn't it? Have you heard that story?
Yeah, so it was one of the chief engineers, I believe, had he was closing up for the day, and he came across the janitor who was sweeping the floor. And he was sweeping the hallway, and the chief engineer asked him, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, we're building rockets, sir. We're going to put a man on the moon." And the janitor saw the simple act of him sweeping the floor. He saw that that was important because it helped the large organization in putting a man on the moon. And he internalized that organization's mission into his own day-to-day activities, as maybe as simple and humble as they might seem on the outside. He recognized he had a part to play, and that if he didn't do his part, somehow the organization would be deficit in being able to reach its goal. And that's the power of culture. And that's why, I think C-suite executives and business drivers, they ignore culture at their own peril, because you can put together a brand message and tell your people, this is what we want you to say about the company when you're talking to people, but that may or may not work. It's when you reach into the hearts and minds of your employees and you get them to believe in the mission of what it is you're trying to achieve, and you give them the latitude to kind of put that in their own words and share that with their networks of people, it becomes something much bigger than just a coordinated campaign. I mean, it takes on a life of its own, and it has an air of authenticity and integrity that promotes trust and ultimately will help you achieve your goal.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here nodding away, really. So more and more companies, right, seem to be taking an interest in thought leadership. How would you describe what it is and what's actually driving interest in thought leadership content?
Yeah, so I think it's really, it's an ability to demonstrate your organization's intellectual muscle and the quality of your people. It's a way to produce and promote content that punches through the noise, because there's so much content being produced, and thought leadership, if done right, can allow you to kind of rise above and really engage an audience in a way that just simple facts and figures or product promotions and things won't. Again, coming back to this concept of we live in an age of big data, and it's only going to get bigger. It's that whole kind of exponential growth of data. In that world, I it's my experience that trust more and more is really going to become a commodity. And how do you we see it. We see it in the news, or there's the concepts of like fake news, and all kinds of like institutions and information, constantly face questions and scrutiny, and so trust, is really hard to come by these days. And so I think that I look at thought leadership as a way that it allows your organization to establish trust. It allows you to tell compelling, showcase compelling solutions to compelling problems, and engage your audience in a way that they get to participate in the conversation without feeling like they're being sold to. It's an an integrity of problem solving, and it harkens back to storytelling. It's the idea of using stories. That everybody loves stories. Everybody loves a good story, and so it's using the principles that drive good storytelling along with problem solving, and in a way that it builds affinity for your brand without your customers and your audience members feeling like you're just simply selling stuff at them. Rather, you're talking to them.
Yeah. People hate being sold to. They hate it. It's it's pretty awful experience as well when someone's sort of trying to push you to do something you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, and that's why I think, like you were saying with the social media and you find that to be so much more effective than like, AdWords and, banner ads, and a lot of like our, our traditional marketing methods are not as effective as they once were, because the audience is so much more sophisticated these days.
Yeah.
And we live in an age, of like TiVo and DVRs and stuff. So, you record your favorite shows and then you blow past all the advertising.
Yeah.
And, you think about all the advertising dollars that go into, that go into that kind of broadcast advertising that gets ignored, or, it's your customers are becoming much more savvy to, their rights as a consumer not to have to like put up with being sold to. So, yeah, you've got to be more sophisticated, and I think at the end of the day, more collaborative in how you're selling. You're telling your story, and how you're reaching your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think certainly over the next few years, well, even now, there is a much more data-led approach to storytelling, no doubt about it, and the analysis of the words that are being used and this sort of stuff. But that's another conversation in itself, really. That's a big, we could talk about that for half an hour, I'm sure. But how would you describe your approach then to content creation in a commercial setting, Paul?
So I would say, what I look for is, when I put together stories, is really to try to like provide a compelling solution to a compelling problem. And, in a way that kind of showcases what our organization can do, a few others can or could, but then also highlight the people that do that. Again, I can't hit on it enough how important it is to showcase your people and show the people that are behind creating the solutions.
Right.
When I put together stories, and for instance, we did a project on artificial intelligence at a previous employer of mine. The employer did a lot of terrific work on artificial intelligence in the legal sphere and the tax sphere, and also in financial services. So, and it would be easy to kind of just hit on the great work that they did from a product standpoint, the solutions that they were creating. And that's really what our marketing organization was for, was to kind of highlight the products and solutions. Rather, what I wanted to do was pull together a number of like thought leaders and influencers from across the industry, and that includes authors, professors, C-suite executives from different like tech companies and financial services companies, and really just try to pull together a cross section of a couple dozen experts who would, like, for instance, approach, say, a topic like artificial intelligence from very different viewpoints, and package that all together in a campaign so that our audience could see, they could get a number of viewpoints on what artificial intelligence is, what it will mean for us as a society, but then also as consumers and commercial professionals, and get those perspectives. But then also the thread through all of that was our company's kind of was at the center of it, showcasing how we were in the mix of this conversation with all these different fantastic people, and the questions that we're asking, and the dialogues that we're having. It kind of demonstrates our place, that we have a place at the table with these folks that are recognized across the industry as world-class influencers and leaders. And so I think that's my approach, is kind of a collaborative approach, showcasing people and trying to like really expand the dialogue and the discussion, so it's not just like you have a problem, we have a solution, kind of a typical sort of marketing approach, but rather let's really kind of blow this out and explore the topic and show you that, as a company, we're gonna try to stay ahead of you, our customer, that we're really thinking about these large scale problems so that we can solve them. Trying to help you, we'll be there just around the corner, and we're going to try to we're try to stay ahead of you, just a step or two ahead of you in the future, and we're going to try to bring you along with us, if that makes sense.
Right. So basically each one of those individual people would have educated the market, right? And educated your potential customers to knowing that you were obviously the right solution, right? So that they would buy you. So it's a bit like it's really an influencer marketing kind of approach, but because we have influencers, right? And we do influencer marketing campaigns and this sort of stuff. But you're talking about something that really is a deep dive, aren't you, into that information more so?
Yeah, and I also try to do it a bit of a mix where it was like some of the folks that we talked to where it very clearly it was very close to like where our customers were at in terms of like a market need, right? So some of these interviews could talk about like solutions or problems that our customers would be faced with now.
Right.
And in some of the interviews, they're really I would say they were kind of more for fun, because like they're dealing with issues or problems that are going to be years down the road. It's more speculative. It's not quite so, brass tacks. Rather, it's just more kind of interesting, kind of more what if. And the reason for that is don't take your customers so literal that they have a problem, you have to solve the problem, and there it is. I mean, they're people, they have interests, they're curious, they want to know things, they want to learn things. And so, be playful, have that kind of flexibility to recognize that, business people too, I mean, obviously they want to follow trends, they want to, stay up on the market, they want to know things that are relevant for their business, but they're also curious human beings. And so recognize that and weave in some storytelling that allows you to have some fun and kind of ask some what if larger questions. And when you put it all together, it allows you to create a campaign where it's a mix of I'm trying to help you answer some brass tacks, day-to-day, like questions that you're going to be faced with now, but then also we're going to pull back the curtain a little further and look speculatively at the future, and have a little fun with it. And that kind of taps into the social sharing aspect of content, and I mean, it sounds a little casual, but it's that idea of like cool content, like, oh, that was a cool story, I want to share that with my network.
Well, I don't think it's casual at all. If you're boring, no one wants to read it, and that's my problem. Not as in I'm boring, I try not to be boring. But at the end of the day, there is so much content being created. The standard of written content and actually podcasts, videos is actually quite low. So in order for you to differentiate yourself, you need to create amazing content, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I mean, and it's, honestly, it's you gotta recognize your audience, right? It's at least in the United States, and I think this is a global trend, but there is, for the first time in business history, we're dealing with a workforce where there are 5 generations in the workforce.
Wow.
Going back to the greatest generation and the baby boomers all the way to the millennials. And so your audiences are very different, and what may have worked for, say, the greatest generation, what we our grandparents and their parents, whatever, what may have worked for them, in terms of like, content is not necessarily the same content that's going to work for a millennial or digital natives. And so, there's life has changed. There's a lot greater emphasis. There's more leisure time now, I think, than probably ever in human history. There's much more time for people to be able to learn things, to explore, and to look, for that cool content, to share that. And so, you have to know your audience. You have to know these are the folks, particularly the millennials and digital natives and stuff. These are the folks that are more and more taking command positions in business, and they are the decision makers. And so there's much greater emphasis, like you said, on not being boring, and providing content that is going to be relevant and interesting, and gets them excited and motivated about you as an organization. Most of the time, I would say people don't really get excited about products quite so much as they get excited about an overall brand experience. And
Right.
Apple makes, they make iPhones, they make cell phones, smartphones. There's others that make smartphones too, but there's that mystique around Apple.
Mhm.
And it's, you kind of buy into the Apple experience. It's not just their smartphones or their iPads, but it's the whole Apple thing. And that is a way of that kind of branding and that kind of thought leadership and marketing content. All of that helps differentiate them. And we kind of stand up Apple as one of the as kind of a paradigm there. But any company can really achieve that in their space, if they have that commitment to like really knowing and engaging with their customers in a way that's authentic. It doesn't feel like you're necessarily being sold to, but it's recognizing you have to do something to be true to yourself, so that it inculcates trust in your audience, and they come back and they want to participate with you.
Yeah, exactly. So there are different points of view on how much emphasis an organization should place on individual spokespersons versus the brand or its products and solutions, right? So when producing thought leadership content, what is your take on what constitutes the right balance between brand content and spokespeople?
So yeah, it's been my experience that in working with different entities, there are different takes on that topic. Some companies are I would say they're very reticent about leveraging their rank and file employees as brand spokespersons. They take kind of, I guess what I would say, a typically or traditionally conservative view that the spokespersons for the brand should be you know small in number, C-suite, kind of highly positioned. They're people that the brand is heavily invested in and that are not quite as likely to jump ship, as it were, as opposed to say like more of a mid-level person
Right.
who may be here today and gone tomorrow, and that kind of thing.
Right.
And particularly when you're putting marketing content together and you're investing in that, then it's like, well, we put this money toward this person and then they left, and now we can't, this idea that you can't use that content. I say, I take the other view. I think, it's, people, I come back to a trust barometer that Edelman Research puts out every year. Edelman, is a research firm, puts out this thing called the Trust Barometer each year, in which they tackle the whole concept of trustworthiness, people's trustworthiness in governments and in corporations and organizations, and executives and whatnot. And each year when they do this, when they poll people, by and large, corporate employees, rank and file employees, really outpace executives in terms of trustworthiness. People kind of, I guess, audiences, again, sophisticated enough to kind of take a skeptical view on messaging when it's delivered by an executive or somebody who is obviously heavily incentivized to kind of toe the company line. But
Right.
audiences are much more much more willing to believe and lend trust to rank and file employees, because I think there's a strong element of like identification there. Identify with that person. That's a regular Joe. That person is more trustworthy than, say the guy in the suit who, is in the corner office, and, I'm very skeptical of him. And so I think that, you can, as an organization, you can really leverage the power of that, of leveraging your employees to help as brand ambassadors to share your story. We also live in a much more diverse world, where diversity is really celebrated. We live in a world where people want to hear a multitude of experiences and voices. And so, you should leverage that and help those people in your company be your brand ambassadors and kind of help, tell your story. And, by doing that, that really lends itself to the whole social sharing aspect. Yeah. And like you were alluding to earlier, that then leads to a much greater increase in top of funnel sales and leads, because, you're really casting the net much wider.
Yeah. Yeah. There are massive programs that are running, aren't there, around social sharing and this kind of stuff. But I think the main problem is time, and actually people have a job to do, so taking the time out to do social media can be a bit of a sort of distraction for them. I think making that easy is certainly the way to go. But in terms of when producing content, right? Should a company be reticent about including other brands, companies, or external spokespeople? Because surely it may detract from the author organization's messaging, right? Potentially.
Well, I think that can be that concern, because obviously, there is this kind of, it's natural to want to put your company first and promote your company and kind of showcase your company as the end all be all in terms of ideas. But what I have found is that you actually, there's a lot of power in collaborating and cross promoting, particularly with key influencers, on certain topics. And this is where, we can get into this, but this is where when you use things like keywords and search engine optimization and stuff, and you start
sorry, I just had to yawn there.
You start looking at data analytics, but you can start seeing who the key people are, on a certain topic, who are, influencing the market.
Yeah.
I would say when you collaborate with other companies and with key influencers and stuff, then you're tapping into their audience base as much as they're tapping into yours. And so, case in point, we did a program where we interviewed a number of people around data privacy, and this was for in advance of the GDPR going into effect on May 2018. And so the company I was working for, we had a certain amount, a couple 100,000 folks that were on Twitter. But when you we interviewed about 24 influencers and executives from other organizations, we were able to expand that reach on Twitter to about 2 million people.
Right.
So those were a whole lot of people that we weren't necessarily reaching on a normal basis through just our own social media efforts. And, those were people that were being invited to come to our web property, to see our interview with the person that, that we were, interviewing, or the people we were interviewing.
Right.
And while they're on our site, looking at the content, looking at these, the interviews, they're also being exposed to our products and services and our other content. And so I think the lesson there is that, when you can expand your discussion to include, other companies and other brands, it's the tide rises all boats. It helps them and it helps you. And so you shouldn't be afraid of you shouldn't have to feel like your company has all the answers. It's recognizing, again, the world we live in. No one of us is as smart as all of us. And so, your audience is sophisticated enough to know that. And in fact, I think they appreciate that, that you have that network of, other companies and key influencers that you collaborate with. And it kind of, elevates your standing, because you're able to attract that kind of talent to the discussion.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's leveraging their authority and credibility, isn't it, to make yourself or your business look better and more knowledgeable and everything else. It's a long conversation. I've got one more question here, and it's about keywords, which switches a lot of people off. As soon as they hear the word search engine optimization, they just switch off and everything else. But it is important to get the traffic right, and because in essence those keywords are questions that people are asking. I mean, that's in essence what a keyword is in simple terms, right? We're not going to go into the differences of different types of keywords and all this sort of technical stuff. But what role do you see things such as keywords and SEO playing in content creation, and how should communicators effectively use them rather than being used by them?
So I think that they are very important. I think that, I will confess that I have had to learn over this course of my career, and I'm not a highly technical person, but I've had to learn over the course of my career not to be afraid of keywords and SEO and data analytics to help drive storytelling. I come at it, it's like I just, at the end of the day, I want to tell good stories, hopefully good stories. So that's what gets me excited. But data analytics and SEO are really important in an age of big data, because they're useful in identifying, influencers that you'd want to collaborate with and topics that you want to tackle. But you got to take care not to ape it too closely, or else you can get lost in the noise. So a case in point, like, this year we've done some campaigns around data privacy and around artificial intelligence. And in looking at, we looked at like social media reports to see who was trending highly on on discussions in social media around artificial intelligence or data privacy. Who were people following? And so that helped us create a list of, we knew some of the people that we wanted to talk to about AI, but then it also helped us understand better, who are the people out there that people in the larger world are really following and are really interested in hearing from. And so, that was kind of a smart way for us to be able to tap into that interest in terms of, identifying interviewees that we could talk to. Keywords, when you look up like artificial intelligence, there's a host of keywords around it, like, machine learning and data science and, natural language processing. And there's all kinds of different buzzwords that go into AI. So when you look at your keywords and you look at how they perform, like how people are searching for them, it can help you, understand better, like how you could take, a large topic like artificial intelligence. It's a big umbrella topic. There's any host of ways you can attack it. Keywords help you kind of slice it up a bit into more digestible parts. So you can see like, oh, well, people have an interest in, for instance, they want to talk about AI in terms of, how it can support anti-money laundering efforts, or people want to understand AI and how it can help with supply chain management and that sort of thing. So, using keywords and data analytics can help you better identify who to talk to and what topics you want to talk about. But what I would say is you've got to be somewhat judicious too, because you can use keywords, you've got to be judicious that you don't fall into this trap of like being so close to them that it just gets lost in, like, say you do a topic like a keyword machine learning, and you're focused on that term because it promotes it, seems to be ubiquitous. Well, if you're not coming at that topic in a way that is somewhat unique and compelling, it's just going to get lost in like all the other stories about machine learning. It won't perform well. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's like you've got to use it intelligently, but not slavishly.
I think that's the perfect place